Okay, everyone. So I have Daniel Sala joining me with Daryl James. And today we're going to pick up on part 2 of his testimony, which I'm very happy he made time. I have one question that was sent to me by the user on YouTube called Community. And this is for you, Daryl. Do you know the date when your future/parallel self finishes his 20 and back in our current timeline?
I don't know the exact date. I'm guessing I remember I came back a year early. I kept on saying that when they sent me back. But I'm guessing around 19 years. So probably in the spring, because I left in the spring. So maybe sometime in the next couple months.
Okay, cool. Yeah, no, that was just a user question. I just like to be back with I like to be very responsive. So Daniel is my co-host today out in Romania, one of my close friends. And Daniel, I understand you wanted to carry on some part of the interview with Daryl and ask him some things.
For sure, yeah. I prepared the boatload of questions for him because I've been, following him since the beginning, and he's an oddity for sure, and he's up there with the best, I would say. And so I prepared some 80 questions, and so here we go. The first one is, do you know who gets to go to space without time loops and getting re-aged at will? You get re-aged.
Who gets to go back?
Who gets the freedom to get re-aged whenever he wants, and he's not relying on the 20 and backs.
Oh. Well, I mean, I wouldn't say anybody in that sense, because I remember the executive officer, Robert. I keep on bringing him up because I talked to him for a couple hours before I left the military, and he was talking about the adrenochrome and everything like that. And I said, well, why? He said they use it to prolong, slow down the aging process and prolong their own lives and things like that. And I asked him, why don't they just, age regress themselves like us? And he said, because they're not considered as important as us and people in the secret space program. So things like politicians and, movies and music and things like that, I don't think really any of them, they get to use it as far as what he told me. But I mean, I guess in the sense that I think it's almost just it's like tech that's on loan to us from ETs, and there's stipulations in a contract that they had to sign of who can use this and who can't. I think is pretty much what it was. Because like I said, he was age regress. He said 17 or 18 times is what he believed, and he was around 400 years old. He told me. So I think it's mostly something that's secret space program, and really nothing else. Nobody else.
So it's kind of like a pecking order, and you're not gonna get a free reign to use all these advanced techs, I guess.
Yeah. I don't even think med beds and healing tanks and things like that. I think it's only an SSP thing. I don't think they're considered, like you said, they're not considered important enough.
Right. And you have recall of your 120 and back and almost went on another. But do you think that there is just a slight chance that you have others just that you don't remember, because there are many whistleblowers who have gone on as many as over 100 of these, like 60 MBACs, not just 20 MBACs?
Oh yeah, but he told me that it does psychological damage to you after 40 years, or it can, and they don't like doing it more than twice. So at the end of your first 20 year, they ask you if you'd like to do another 20 years, and you have the option of yes or no. And but yeah, like I said, he said 17 or 18 times, but he said he had to go through a psych eval every 2 weeks to make sure he was still psychologically sound. It's not a guarantee the way it sounds, because he didn't seem, different or anything like that to me. He seemed like a normal person, but he was just age regressed a lot. And it does have, withdrawals. It does have drawbacks once you go past doing it twice. So,
the person I'm actually thinking about, might as well say she's Penny Bradley, and she went on 91, 60 MBACs, because Germans do 60 MBACs, and that means she's 5,500 years old, if you add her Earth years. So that the way I have to interpret that is that I know she's mind fractured, meaning she has a lot of alters. And because you said that the limit is like 40 years before you get into psychological damage, the way I interpret it, I rationalize it is every time she's taken, another segment of her mind is used, and that gets aged, and then the next one gets used and gets aged, and then because otherwise, I doubt that a human mind could possibly get to 5,500 years old, like just the one. It seems a little much. But yeah, the other question was, a lot of whistleblowers talk about cover memories that you have to get through to get to the real stuff. Have you experienced something like that? That is clearly not real, but is hiding something.
I mean, I've had memories on the German world that I don't believe are real, that maybe might be hiding something else, that I did have a family and things like that. But then, like, I remember Robert told me that I was, only in the Dark Fleet for 2 years. So that couldn't happen unless they accelerate the growth of their children. But I mean, I've had memories like that. That was really the only one I can really think of that, maybe could, was any kind of a false memory, but I just kind of blew it off because I used what he told me as like a timeline almost. I'm glad I asked that. I'm glad I asked, where I was and how long I was there, because that way I have a way of like gauging, exactly the amount of years that I did this, that, and the other. So
right. And do you know the relationship that Solar Warden has to the other factions, namely ICC, Kruger, and Earth Defense Force, which is now Space Force?
Kruger we work with. I remember working with Kruger. And he even said you worked with Kruger. I think I worked with a guy from I think he was from Nebraska or something, from the United States, but he was from that alternate universe, which is what I know what Kruger is. It's like a German corporation from an alternate universe. That's what I believe he told me. And what were some of the other ones you named off?
ICC, aka Planetary Corporations, or Kruger, or Earth Defense Force.
Well, you said Space Force. I do remember being in Solar Warden and being kind of, the rivalry of the different branches of the military, in the sense that it kind of upset me, not a lot, but a little bit, where, Navy did all the work, but Air Force is going to get all the credit, where Solar Warden established everything, but then it's just going to all go to Space Force, and they're going to get all the credit. I remember being kind of, downed about that. But as far as the other interplanetary ones, I mean, like I said, I don't believe I've come back yet, so my mind isn't 100% solid. Most of my memories are of more of the, what I would consider mundane things. Being on watch in the ship and things like that, I mean, it was mostly boring. You were kind of just like space customs when you're up there, making sure nobody would leave or go without your permission, things like that, come in and leave. But, more of the mundane things aren't as much of a memory to me, but more social interaction with other people I knew. I remember that more, just like life.
And these memories, do they come as a block, or do you actually live them live, as in by location?
They come almost like in blocks, yeah, where, like I said, things will be mundane, and then something big happens in your life, and that becomes a memory, and that's like how the memory kind of works for me. Like I said, Robert told me that the memories would come in real time, in the sense that, there's like two of me, and when this guy up here gets like a special memory, something that really sticks to him, then me down here remembers that memory. So it's not like I really aren't like, I can remember the beginning and I can remember the end really well, but everything in between was kind of a blur until, time went on, and then I started to remember more and more. So it was just, that's how he put it. You're going to remember it in real time. That's how he said it.
Yeah, that's how it usually is. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I forgot to mention about cover memories or implanted memories. they usually tend to peter out after like a few years. So I don't think that it's the case with you that you have significant cover memories, because what your recall is like from 2005, right? So
Yeah, well, I got out of the military in 2005. I volunteered for Solar Warden in 2003, in the spring of 2003. So, but no, I got out of the military. Period. Like when I met him, it's the whole kind of thing where you're allowed to meet your chain of command before you get out of the military. So I did 2 years in England. I was stationed in England for 2 years, and they got me right off the bat. Like I was only there less than a month before I signed up for Solar Warden. So I still had another 2 years, and that's why all this other strange stuff was happening. All these, people saying things, to me almost like they were trying to see if I remembered something or kind of jog
right,
my
yeah.
memory. Or he had people tagging along. He even told me that, like, people I knew, to see that if I had any memories, if I remembered anything, just to keep an eye on me to make sure that I had no memories. At the time, I really didn't. So
That's also a common theme, yeah. Testing you. But I was wondering if Solar Warden assets or Kruger, have you witnessed any enhancements like robotics or something like that that their super soldiers had?
I think I remember they would put something over they'd do things like an eye implant. I remember implants and things like that, and they could just take it out. They put you in a med bed and they would heal it right back up. I remember the suits and things like that they would have you wear. The weapons, there are different kinds of weapons, like a rail gun, a laser, plasma, things like that. But yeah, I remember certain things like that. But I mean, there was always like a type of like nanotech inside of you, Picotech, nanotech, things like that. There was always something like that.
Including in Solar Warden.
Oh yeah, and a Solar Warden, yeah.
Right.
It would do things for you. It would like keep you fit. Like I said, when I first came back, it wasn't only the guy I think who did it for me in the med bed whenever he came back, but it was just like I was really toned. I was really in good shape. Like I was in good shape before, but I was really like toned. I had a lot of muscle definition, and I didn't have that before. And it was just like the next day, it was just like all of a sudden I had all this muscle definition. I didn't know why.
And the difference between like enhanced people and cyborgs is the amount of brain, because they're limited to like the small part of it, like a pituitary gland or something for cyborgs. But you mentioned that you saw cyborgs, actual cyborgs that were from the German faction when they broke through the hull of their starship. And can you describe how what those cyborgs look like?
I would see them in the Dark Fleet sometimes too. They were almost like, I think sometimes like a visor almost, with like a fleshy mouth, kind of like skin flesh, and maybe like a bald flesh scalp. And then like everything else was just kind of robotic. But like the mouth and things like that would be flesh when they spoke to you. I think the voice was somewhat robotic, but they had like a fleshiness. It was like flesh, the mouth and the top of the head. But there'd be like a visor for eyes instead, things like that.
There's a chance that that wasn't real skin. That was kind of a latex, but I'm not sure. That's what I heard.
There's a chance. I have no idea. Yeah, they were one of those things that kind of gave you the creeps, because I remember the Dark Fleet. They would threaten you with that sometimes, to put your soul into one of those things and just keep you.
Yeah, because they
last one of those things. Yeah,
they last much longer than just human.
Because they were like lower than us on the totem pole.
Oh yeah,
like lowest. Yeah.
They usually get put in cyborg if you don't have the psi abilities or like the high IQ that you had.
Mm-hmm.
But you mentioned that you went into deep caverns under St. Morgan. Have you been to other inner Earth places?
I don't remember. I just remember in St. Morgan, below the base, and it was more than just caverns in the sense of natural. You could tell it was made by someone. I'm not saying man-made, but there were hallways and rooms and things like that. It was, it was very. It wasn't just like you like going cave spelunking or something like that. There weren't stalagmites and stalactites. Everything was very smooth. I think they may have used that. What is that? That glass, that heating technology, where it's almost like a nuclear reactor, where they're able to just
Where
cook
it
the
like
glass.
flagellates the rock, it like melts it as it like Phil Schneider. I'm sorry to interrupt y'all.
Yeah, yeah.
Phil Schneider would go in depth about that, how that certain caverns and stuff, they would just, instead of having all this waste that they would have to haul back up to the surface so it's obvious, they would, I think the term is deflagrate or flagrate, something like that, where it's like this vulcanization of that rock, turning it into like, obsidian, if you will. Am I correct?
Like 2 or 3 feet of glass. That makes the most sense to me. Because like I said, whenever they were dragging me on the ground, the tops of my feet were dirty. So it wasn't like it was clean or a floor. It was still like, I still had like that clay kind of look on the tops of my feet. But but it wasn't concrete. It wasn't like the underground base. The underground base was covered in concrete, and the ceiling had, the conduit and all the plumbing and stuff like that. It wasn't covered up by, suspended ceiling or anything like that. It was just, you could just see all the conduit and piping and stuff in the underground base. But as far as the caverns underground, it looked almost like an adobe, like when you're inside of an adobe. It was very smooth, but there were hallways and rooms, openings and things like that. There were different like doorways for openings in separate rooms.
I'd say that there's a safe bet. It's a safe bet that those were left there by non-humans.
Oh yeah, that's what I thought too. Yeah.
And I'm curious about this because you mentioned in the last episode that higher dimensional beings can only live inside the Earth. And does that mean that, have you heard anything about whether planets are hollow?
Well, the moon was.
I was going to get
it
to
would
that.
make sense. Yeah, it would make sense. I mean, I think on the world I was on for like over a decade, I think they had like an underground kind of tube system. There was an above ground tram system, but underground as well. And on the German world, I remember there being an above ground tram system, but I don't remember going underground in the German world very often.
Because there's more and more people that are saying that, sources are credible. They're saying that all celestial bodies are hollow. Yeah, I'm not surprised at all by the moon because that's kind of well known. And I even heard that it was actually a mothership of the Syrians that was converted. And could you tell how thick the crust was? Because according to this theory that it was a mothership, the crust was no more than 40 kilometers and between 20 and 40 kilometers thick. And all that was just cosmic dust that was collected from around Earth, which was a process that ensured that life could flourish on Earth because it was surrounded by dust before that.
Are you talking about on the moon or on Earth?
Yeah, how thick the dust layer is before it gets hollow.
On the Earth?
No, on the moon, sorry.
On the moon, shoot. I don't know. I couldn't tell you. I remember, like I said, whenever I got to the moon, I didn't fly to the moon. I went through a portal in an underground base. So I just appeared there. So I don't remember taking a ship. I remember getting on a ship and leaving, but I mean, I had no screens or anything to look at, to be able to see how we're coming out or anything like that. I do remember being on the moon. It reminds me of something else. That woman, April, I knew that was on my base. I remember I asked her one time, aren't you, afraid of getting pregnant or anything like that? And she said, that doesn't affect us here. She says, the moon does that, but since we're in the moon, it doesn't affect us here. So it was almost like, I didn't really get it, but it was almost like the moon causes like a woman's ovulation where she doesn't, I guess maybe she would be able to control it without it. But she said that, I think just with the smart glass pad, she was able to control it and just having the tech in her body. But she referred to, like, she was saying we're inside the moon, so it doesn't affect me, but outside the moon, it would affect. That's why it affects Earth. But
very interesting. I even heard that the moon had a part to play in the first female because humans were androgynous to begin with. But now I'm going to get into some controversial territory because I don't know if you heard, I mean, you probably haven't, but if you heard from space, maybe, that there are a huge number of Germans that are civilians from their colonies, because they allegedly colonize a hell of a lot of planets in the Sagittarius arm, and they are having to come back to the solar system no further than the Oort cloud, and in huge numbers, and they're getting shut down by Solar Warden. This is what we hear. And do you remember shooting down German ships that are coming through the sun, through the portal of the sun?
I remember just shooting down ships, dozens sometimes in a day. Just and it was less. I don't really, of course, Germans, because the Germans are hand in hand with the reptiles. It's for the off-world Germans, they call them. And yeah, I remember shooting down Germans. But I also remember, and factions of Germans that are trying to join Solar Warden, because I know a majority of the Germans, just their citizenship, really don't like the reptiles at all. It seemed almost like I don't know, they got like a raw deal or something. They made a deal with something they didn't know what they were getting into.
That's true. That's a true fact. They're trying to escape from their Draco like influence, but yeah. So it's they're complaining, like the people from the German point of view, that Solar Warden is kind of doing this underhandedly or whatever, because they're shooting just civilian ships that are defenseless. The reason why they're coming back is because they're getting banished for abusing time travel, tax and stuff that they did to get to those colonies in the first place, and also their use of cyborgs. So they're getting sent back by higher dimensionals, which are called the Galactic Authority, which even the Draco submit to. And that's how come they're having to come back. And it's a big war between Solar Warden and Nachtwaffen or Dark Fleet. So yeah, but obviously you have no free will when you're in the program, so no one's blaming any of the whistleblowers. I mean, obviously, but yeah. So I was wondering.
We would always give them a chance. We would always try to establish contact with them. And if most of the time the ones we shot down, they wouldn't even respond. And if they didn't respond after a certain distance, when they got so close or so far away, we would just shoot them down. But we would, we just didn't shoot them down without establishing some sort of contact. I remember that. We wouldn't just shoot them down just without even giving them fair warning.
I see. Okay. Back to the density, the problem. Have you encountered third density beings while you were jacked up on fifth?
Oh yeah, I definitely have that memory of the moon. I don't remember if I said this in the last one, but something called density sickness, where
this was so interesting. Sorry I'm interrupting you, but this is the thing I loved, and Daniel and I were talking about this. This is one of the reasons we loved your testimony, bro. No one else touches this. Talking about how you go up high, it sounds like a chipmunk, and then you go back down and relaxes you. I'm not trying to steal your thunder, but this was so fucking cool, man. So please, anyway, continue. I just had to share my excitement.
Yeah. I just remember there was I don't know, when you were working on the moon, it petered off after a while. It was it was something that would happen a lot. Probably the first 4 or 5 days, and then it would get less the next week. And then by the 4th week, it didn't really happen that much, and it would just go away. But yeah, you would be working, and you would just see these blurs in front of you, and you wouldn't know what was happening. And everything was really high pitched, and you just heard these chirps and squeaks and stuff like that. You really didn't know what was happening. And all of a sudden you would wake up and somebody was holding you by your arms and are you okay? Are you okay? Kind of shaking you. And you're like, yeah. And the guy told me, oh, it's just density sickness. He's like, it'll go away after a while. And then I remember I saw it happen to a guy one time. And he just became stone. It was just he looked like he just became stone. He was frozen. And he was standing there frozen. And they were trying to help him and stuff like that. And the guy said, hold him, make sure he doesn't fall or nothing happens to him. So I was holding him by his arms. And I remember I never seen it happen before. So I grabbed his wrist and I was just kind of moving his arm up and down just to see if I could do it. I don't know why. And then the other guy said, he said, cut that out. He said, you're going way too fast for him. You'll hurt him. And I didn't know. And then he just snapped out of it. So yeah, it's like whenever you're fifth, I mean, when you get better at it, I can remember walking above ground in St. Morgan, you know, much later. And I think maybe we did interact with people. And it's just, as you get better at it, you know how to kind of not really go into third density, but you know how you need to speak and how you need to move. You have to move much slower and speak much slower and things like that in order to talk to third density beings. But yeah, I remember that. I remember density sickness really well. That was one of my like first real vivid memories.
I mean, I'm just speaking for myself, but I would love to experience fifth density and never go back. I mean, it sounds like a dream. You said that it's tiring, but I don't know. I don't see the disadvantages too much.
And that's part of what your depression is and stuff like that. When you do have memories, that's one of the reasons why they don't want you to have memories, because I've said this before. It's almost this like, you know, you're being ripped off. You know that it's more natural. It just, I don't know, it feels like where you should be at. It doesn't feel like you should be here, but you really don't notice it until you know, you come back and you start having all these memories and stuff like that. But yeah, it's just, as I was told before, everything, you become faster, you become stronger, your IQ goes up, things like that. That's why ETs appear to be so intelligent, and that they can do things that are, you know, almost, you know, spiritual-like or something like that. It's because it's just you're moving so fast. But then I remember like Robert telling me about the reptiles and how they're actually in fourth density, and how fourth density is more like almost like spirit realm, like astral plane kind of spirit realm. And you know, he told me Aquino could be, you know, in this room listening to us and we wouldn't even know it. You know what I mean? He's like, I'd be able to pick it up better than you because I'm still fifth density. He's like, but it's hard to like pick them up because they're almost like on a spirit realm. And that chair they put me in, the reason why it was so big, he told me, is because it was meant for reptiles. The reason it was because their fourth density, in order to interact with other fifth density beings, they have to be pushed up artificially into fifth density. So that chair was originally built for them, and they just let us use it.
And are we talking about the etheric plane, as in the land of the sleeping and the land of the dead, when we're talking about fourth? And when we're talking about fifth, I suppose we're talking about astral, meaning you can project stuff at will?
I mean, he just kind of seemed like, the way he explained it to me as far as fourth density is it's like he could be here and we wouldn't even know it. Is like, it's almost like a ghost. He kind of almost explained it like you said, almost like the spirit world or something like that. I really don't know how to explain it. I've never been actually in fourth density, but it's kind of like how he explained it to me. Maybe, I don't know. That explains a lot of the whole, like I said, I ran into the Satanists and things like that. That explains the whole Satanism thing, you know? If you want to get their attention, I guess it's pretty easy and they can just pop up.
Yeah.
Maybe the people that were working in those caverns as Satanists, maybe that's what I kind of theorized what they did. And that's how they got kind of brought into the program. Because I remember that guy I called the goon in the bar, he bragged to the guys one time. He said, I've been on this base 25 years. He said that. And I looked at him and I said, you don't look more than 25 years old. And he kind of like caught himself like, oh, you know, because I was like the only one that wasn't part of that clique that was hanging out at that bar. And it was, I hung out there because, you know, every now and again he'd get drunk and start telling me things that, like a life I had that I didn't know about. So it was just like a curiosity. So.
Right. And since we're on the topic of densities, have you actually encountered someone higher than fifth?
I believe Arcturians we work with a lot. I don't want to get the Andromedas and the Arcturians mixed up. They're the deeper blue skin ones with the big heads, and they have like black eyes.
They're both blue. They're both blue. But I think Arcturians have like a more sharper jaw line, and the Andromedans, I think, have a lighter blue.
Yeah, these things were deep blue, and they had like black eyes and like swirling blue kind of, almost like galaxies. Their pupils looked almost like swirling blue galaxies, and very small mouths, narrow noses. And I remember Robert was talking about the dualities and things like that. He was trying to tell me all this stuff, and I said, "Well, what's the duality of the universe?" He's telling me like the duality of Earth. I said, "What's the duality of the universe?" And he said that's something that only ninth density beings are just now beginning to understand. So, like, he had no idea about the meaning of the universe and things like that itself. That's something that we really can't unlock even at fifth density. It's only something that ninth density beings can only are just starting to understand.
Right. But yeah, it sounds for sure like Arcturians, and also they're much more involved with humans and Andromedans, so probably them.
They were almost like what do you call it? Like the negotiators. Everything kind of has a clique. It's weird in the universe, and they're almost like the negotiators of the universe. I don't know if it's an aura thing or a pheromone thing or something like that, but you can have two factions at each other's throats ready to fight, and one of them can walk into the room and everybody just calms down. It's really strange. They have like a really calming effect. Just their presence is calming.
They're actually renowned for being the best healers ever.
Yeah, they have a very calming effect. Yeah, they calm everybody down, and that's why they're so good at negotiations. They're always present during like a negotiation and stuff like that.
Right. And you mentioned that before going into the Dark Fleet, you had some chips implanted. And can you like list all the functions of said chips?
Before going into the Dark Fleet, I had chips put in.
Yeah, you had that. You were put on this gurney and this doctor with a mask on.
Right. Yeah, I think that was like partially what later on when I was in the Dark Fleet, there were the master walked in, they called him, which is like the head reptile of the ship. And he walked in, and he had the first officer of the Germans right behind him. And I had never seen him before, and they were on the bridge basically of the ship, and he was walking in, and everybody next to me was like trembling. They weren't looking at him, and they were like trembling, and they were like making noises. They were trembling so much, like whimpering and things like that. And I didn't understand what was happening, and I just was kind of looking away. I didn't look at him, but I wasn't trembling, and I guess that wasn't enough for him. So he hit something like on his belt. He had something like on his belt buckle or something like a button, and it just caused horrible pain, and it caused me to just fall down in pain. And I think that was probably part of it, that chip. But as far as other ones, I mean, I remember that, and I remember them putting like almost like a spinal tap when they flipped me over like in the gurney, and they kind of like put a long needle down into my spine, and I think that was like the tech, like the actual nanotech and things like that. I think they put it into your nervous system. Maybe it establishes a link or something like that with your nervous system and spreads out throughout your body. But it seemed like when they actually put it in for the first time, they put it in through your spinal cord. At least the Dark Fleet did
that. But since that was kind of a pivotal moment where you remember it, I would surmise that you haven't had the thought censoring that many Dark Fleet insiders talk about, where you just thought of a rebellious action and you would get shocked around the chip part, where the chip was implanted in the brain. Do you remember getting shocked by just thinking something, like censoring your thoughts?
I don't know about that, but like I said, I remember almost like when you were on your downtime, and it kind of left you alone. The artificial intelligence, I remember that. But if it wanted you to go somewhere, sometimes I remember just being woken up in the middle of sleep, and I would just kind of be going along for the ride. I remember that. I remember just not really being in control of myself. As far as like even a rebellious, maybe that was one of them. I don't even remember. And I don't even know if he hit something on his belt. It's just what I thought, because I remember ETs did have belts, which is, it seems like a universal thing with life in the universe. You could have a tribe in Africa, they don't wear any clothes, but they'll still have a strap of leather around their waist. Same thing with like the rainforest. It seems almost like belts are a universal thing with all living beings.
Okay, and since we're on the Mars topic, about the glass pads, I heard that from Tony that they were actually see-through. Was that on series where he was? Is that the case on Mars as well?
Oh yeah, yeah, they're see-through. But I think I remember being able, if you held them up at an angle into the light, you could actually see thinner than like hairs, like little gold wires, like very, very thin. But when you just look right through them, yeah, it was just glass. It just looked like glass. But if you held it up at like an angle into the light, I remember doing that before. You could actually see like thin as hair, kind of like little wires going through it.
And Tony said that they tracked your eye movements, and that seemed kind of rudimentary compared to what you said. So with you, it was all telepathy. You didn't have to input anything other than your thought, right?
Yeah, it was just you put your hands on either side of it, on the corners, the lower corners of it, and it just like established a link, and then it just did whatever you wanted.
And did you have free reign to use them whenever?
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, that's where I got my music from and things like that. Was the smart glass? You had one in your room. You had one with you. It's something they call a universal ET tech, where everything has it. Doesn't matter if it's like a reptile or Nordic or Andromedan or whatever. Everything uses, maybe not Andromedans, but everything fourth, fifth density around that area. It uses a smart glass pad, things like that. It's like a universal ET tech. Everything has it.
And how does the internet or whatever the equivalent is on the glass pad compare to our version?
I mean, it's instant. Everything is instant as far as speed. I don't really remember an actual. I don't think it was really Wi-Fi signal. A lot of it was this. A lot of it is telepathy and spirituality in the sense that ships have souls. A lot of it is like that. It's like you're interconnecting with. I don't know. It's almost like you're interconnecting with the ship itself on a soul or consciousness or whatever it is you want to call it kind of level. So
Yeah,
yeah.
I heard that the ship does the math and you do the consciousness part. But I was wondering, like, how big is the database on these glass plates? Like, how much information can you access? I would assume much more than on Earth, right?
Oh God, yeah, yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. I mean, anything, any. I mean, well, like where I was limited, and what I could do. But I remember, because we were conscripts, is what they called us, is what I remember, like short for conscriptions, volunteers. We were pretty low on the totem pole. There were bloodline ones. There were people who were like above us, and they were like taken when they were very young. They were kidnapped when they were very young, but it was almost like a bloodline contract. And then there were people like me who just volunteered, who really had no bloodline contract or anything like that. And yeah, I mean, like I remember because I played an instrument and I started getting better. I started playing different instruments, but because I played an instrument, I was able to access music, any kind of music I wanted. They gave me access to any music I wanted. And the other guys, I think they could only listen to like classical or something like that. They had like a very few things they could listen to, but I could listen to anything I wanted. I actually had guys that were trying to like buy, I don't know, top 40 off of me and things like that, buy the songs from me, because they did give you like a credit system where you could buy coffee, tea, sugar, beer. They even give you like beer on the ship. You're allowed to, but I only made enough to probably buy about 2 beers a week. So you didn't get a lot, but they gave you some sort of like, credit.
And I heard that you would even get bootlegged music and movies on Mars and from Earth. And but I don't know what effect like science fiction movies would have there because it would seem so tame. I would think, like the technology in the movies from Earth. But
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and do you have something like a TV news broadcast or any or something like that in the SSP?
No, no, I'm not in the Dark Fleet. I remember in Solar Warden, I was an officer, so I got, the word of the day. That was like my news. Like you would do typical military where all the officers would circle up and you would have your smart glass pads and they would say, today's orders are this, that, and the other. This is what's happening. This is where we're at. They would give you the overall plan of where we're at, what the future goals were, things like that. You would do that every morning. So that was like your news. Even in even in Solar Warden, they didn't want you to have too much other things distracting you in the sense that they wanted you to the mission. Even that was extremely disciplined. So I mean, I think I remember sometimes watching a movie or something like that, but it really wasn't. I mean, and then you were like fifth density too, so it was almost like boring to you. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? It's a different mindset, and that's why a lot of the fifth density memories they're abstract to pick up more. Memory itself is abstract, but they're more abstract just because it's so much different than the memory. It's like you're trying to wrap your head around in a third density, fifth density memory. So it's way more. Everything is colors are more vibrant, sounds are crisper. I remember you'd sometimes feel as though you were swimming back and forth from like the future into back into the present. That whole idea of time is an illusion. That's a lot more apparent to you. That makes a lot more sense because you would sometimes go down your own timeline and just kind of get lost down your own timeline and have to kind of pull yourself back into the present. And it was just, it was strange. It was a lot than just, it's a lot different than just. I can't explain it. It's more. I don't know. It's a lot more different than I can explain. A spiritual level is just everything. The consciousness, the way you think, everything about it is different.
I can imagine, yeah. And you mentioned these bloodline people. Can you tell from your memory if they were third or fifth density?
Oh, they were fifth. They were just picked up when they were young. The contracts are weird in the sense, and I think reptilians break the rules a lot with contracts, which is gonna, it affects the balance. All ETs kind of have this concept of the balance where it's almost like karma. You have to follow rules. It's really strange, but it's I don't know, like why I had to sign a contract, such a detailed contract and things like that. Because if they just would have took me, it would have been against the balance or whatever. And it's something that can kind of, wind up to. It's almost like karma. It can bite you in the end. But yeah, it's just they have to follow these set rules, and it's strange.
I kind of wonder if, because Tony Rodriguez said that when he was on series, he was a slave, but he said that he witnessed news broadcasts like on shops and whatever on the street and in bars, and he saw that there were organized sports that were interplanetary in from the German colonies. And I wonder if those were kind of 5 or 3D. Now I'm kind of questioning all of this, but yeah, it's impossible to say.
Yeah. I don't know.
And another thing that we keep hearing from Dark Fleet people is that they were told that Earth was not livable. It was bombed, and not for another, like, I don't know, 100 years or something, wouldn't be inhabitable. And did you hear anything like that, or did that change?
You heard all kinds of stuff. It was just like having a job in the sense of, it was just like being in boot camp where they try to keep you as confused as possible. It seemed like, you know what I mean? It was like, I mean, my mind was wiped. I mean, like I said, I remember just, I still knew how to speak and everything, reason and everything else, but as far as what made me, it was gone. For some reason, like I said, when I met that girl, April, she said, "What's your name?" And everybody remembers their name. You can remember your name for some reason, and then I guess if you go deeper into it, you can remember other things. But I remember, yeah, like first they told you, yeah, there was some sort of nuclear war, and you were some leftover DNA or something like that they picked up, and they cloned you, and yeah. But as I got closer to the German, I mean, I was playing music for them and stuff like that, and they had like a tavern, like a pub, a bar, and I think I got closer to them, and they treated me more like a human being, and they leveled with me. Just you volunteered for this, and this is who you are now, and things like that. But and that was like another reason why I listened to older music and things like that, because I remember looking at the music, and I would look at the albums. And it reminded, I kept on wondering, like, is this something my parents listened to? Like, it meant a lot to me if I could remember more about, my mother, my father, my family, things like that, it would make me whole again. It would make me me again, I guess is what my logic was. So I listened to a lot of stuff that I grew up as a kid.
I thought that you were going to say that you intimated from the lyrics that Earth was still around, but no.
No, no, it was like the Germans told me. Yeah, the Germans just kind of leveled with like, yeah, like what's happening. But in the beginning, yeah, they told you that there was some nuclear war, and you were just some sort of clone of a person that used to be on the Earth at one time or something like that. So they
Yeah,
just seem to try to keep you as confused as possible, so you're easier to manipulate.
and also there was a tactic to like incentivize soldiers to fight because they didn't have anywhere else to go. So you were on your own on Mars, stranded, I think. But you mentioned that they had inanimate objects that were ensouled. And do you have any memory of how they would harvest these souls? And what was the mechanism of how would like a human soul function inside like a sword or something?
When you would fight, when we ambushed a reptilian ship, you would actually keep like small like cubes on your belt. You would keep like boxes, and it was almost like a way to store the souls, because normally souls keep their memory. And if something is considered very dangerous, you don't want to get it away again. So you want to entrap that soul so it could just be recycled again into the universe. But yeah, and I remember they had like little they would actually grow like little walnut-sized kind of brains that would keep the souls into the weapons and things like that. The brains weren't really functioning. It was just like a way of entrapping the soul into the armor, like in the Dark Fleet and stuff like that, and the rifles and things like that. So yeah, you would actually have like a type. I don't know if it's human or what, but I don't think the brain itself thought. It was just a way to imprison the soul so it couldn't escape.
Yeah, yeah, they are also the first to mention this, as well as with the density. So, um, and another common theme is that Draco telepathy in particular is extremely invasive. I think it's called full intimacy telepathy, and it kills most people, most humans that aren't like bloodline or metagene or whatever. Have you witnessed this type of phenomenon where just being in the presence of a Draco would be enough to, within a half an hour, to kill a normal human?
I saw a guy. I don't know if he was he killed. I think he was killed by the reptiles, but the Germans helped. There was a guy that kept on. Some people would give up. It's like it happened on the moon. Some people, they would just give up. They just got beaten too many times or tortured too many times, and they would just give up. I don't know. But I remember, yeah, dying isn't good. Shock isn't good. Clinical death isn't good still. If it happens a certain amount of times in a short period of time, you go into almost like a coma, like a comatose kind of state, where I think your eyes are open, you're still breathing and everything like that, but they refuse to eat, they refuse to just do anything. They just kind of lay on the ground. It's almost like a coma. And if you do that, if you put somebody into shock, you know, once is okay, twice is not good, 3 times is dangerous, and 4 times hardly anybody comes back. And I remember Robert telling me when I said I remember being on the ship and they broke my back, and then the reptiles ate my legs as like a punishment. And he said the reason they broke your back is so you wouldn't go into shock, so you wouldn't feel the pain. They were just trying to scare you. And but yeah, I remember. I don't know what it was, why I was with them, but like the master he had a guest or something like that, and I was with them, but I was just kind of walking behind them, and I was picking up on what they were saying, and the guest, he said he can hear us, and then the master said yes, he can, and then they got like, I don't know, they started making they would do like make noises and stuff like snarls and things like that, and they creep closer to you, almost as like a way of intimidating you. And I think the guest said something like he doesn't fear us like the others, and then the master said that's why I like him. And he said, the master said, you can hear us, can't you? And I said yes to him telepathically. And they got really upset about that. They really got ticked off. They got really close to me. And he said, don't speak to me that way. And then I said out loud, I said, yes, master. You got to call him master all the time. And he said, you know what I can do to you, don't you? And I said, yes, master. But it was a thing, like, I did pick up on him telepathically sometimes. But it's just, when you're below them and stuff like that, they call you their pets, things like that, when you're their slaves and everything like that, and they don't like you. Even if you do have those abilities, they don't want you responding back to them telepathically. It's considered like an insult, like you're too beneath them to communicate to them in that way. But as far as like, I mean, yeah, I could see that. I mean, they were really powerful telepathically, yeah, and I could definitely see how they could. And I think it might have happened to that guy. They just kept on messing with him because he got to a point where he didn't want to do anything anymore. He didn't want to work, and that would happen sometimes.
So you did sense the difference between the power of their telepathy compared to like human telepathy.
Oh yeah, and it wasn't even the noises they made or the physical, the way they approached me. It was just, yeah, everything just got dark. It was like the room got real pitch black dark, and all I could see was their eyes. Everything, it was like my reality kind of changed when they saw that I picked up on them. Yeah, it was like, yeah, they were just completely messing with my mind, it felt like.
I think the only people who they cut some slack to, the Draco, are people who are hybridized with Draco. But anyway, have you actually managed to practice any form of telepathy or psi post SSP on Earth?
Well, that was another thing. Like, I brought up my dad, and it was just like, he was real smart. He just had kids when he was young, and he had to go into, like, you know, county work, city work, and things like that. But he was a telepath, my dad. And I remember just being like, I don't know, probably one of my earliest memories being about 3 years old or something, and sitting on the couch with him. I was watching Sesame Street or something, and he said, you know, your sister used to be able to do this when she was your age. And he said, but when she got older, she forgot. And I had brothers and sisters, half brothers and sisters from his first marriage. And he said, you know, your other brothers and sisters could do it, but they forgot also. He said, the only one who remembered was your oldest brother, Larry. And he said, do you think you'll remember when you get older? And I said, yeah, I'll remember, Dad. I remember doing that. But I remember, like, sometimes bumping into families. Like, there was a friend of my sister's, and they could do it. And then there was, like, a family where, you know, we went to church with, and they all could do it. But, I mean, I sometimes will do things where I'll go to, like, these little UFO things and things in public libraries and stuff like that, and I'll just kind of sit back. And there's almost always, like, a group of people that know how to do it, and who are telepathic, and they're trying to pick up on other people. And that's why I do it sometimes. Sometimes I answer, and sometimes I don't. But it's difficult in the sense that if you don't have anybody around to do it for a long time, you know, it gets kind of like, is this my thoughts or is this, you know, their thoughts? It gets kind of like that. But yeah, I mean, I've tried to do it with sometimes with people before, but it's completely hit or miss. It's just, they either know how to do it or they don't. So.
And it doesn't help that you're no longer in fifth density, right?
Yeah, it doesn't help, but it was something I could do when I was very young. I think maybe all children can do it, in my opinion.
Like the Pleiadians, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. I think all children, but I mean on Earth, you know, I think all children can do it. It's just something you outgrow. I think it's just something you just forget you could do, you know. But since I think it helped me because my dad could still do it, and he would do it with me and stuff like that. And I think my mom kind of knew how to do it, but she was just almost like, it was almost like subconsciously to her. But my sister couldn't do it, and like I said, my only other sibling that can do it is my older brother.
Right. And going back to Solar Warden, just out of curiosity, what was their attire like?
I remember a blue one, but it wasn't like the Pleiadian one. It wasn't like a skin tight. It was kind of more just like a uniform. And I remember it had maybe darker highlights around the shoulder area, you know, like a darker blue. It would be like darker, like right here, and then blue. But I also remember like a gray one too. It was like a gray, and the shoulders were like a darker, almost like a black.
And the Dark Fleet was all black, I would imagine, right?
Yeah, like it was different than what the actual, Germans wore, the off-world Germans. But yeah, you just wore like a black uniform. But it wasn't like a, what do you call it, like a coverall. It wasn't like a onesie. Neither was
No.
the one in Solar Warden. It was, pants and a shirt separate.
And what's the furthest spot in space that you ventured in Solar Warden missions?
I mean, that's something that Robert told me, where he said that I've been to more places than he has, but I don't remember exactly all the places I was at. I think maybe the home world of the Pleiadians was one of the further places I went. I remember the Greys kind of abandoned a big faction of the Greys abandoned the reptiles when we were fighting them, and they went like near to the ends of the universe. Like they kind of got expelled or something. But we didn't even bother looking for them because we didn't even find them very. Without the AI and without the reptiles to really tell them what to do, they were just kind of just servants to the reptiles like everything else. So we really didn't see them as a danger anymore. But as far as even that in itself is a difficult being far away is a different concept than we understand on Earth. As far as I remember, the way density works with like time space, it's almost like a cone, like a funnel. And if you're at the bottom, like we are right now, like fifth, like we're at the bottom, and the cone slowly goes up. So we're at the bottom. So it's nearly impossible for us to get to one end of the universe and the other. But if you're fifth density, you're kind of at the middle of the cone. So you still need craft and stuff like that to go from one end of the universe. But you could do it. It just takes a while. I remember Robert telling me that he said if you didn't have there's jumps in the universe.
Oh yeah.
Portals and things like that. And he said if you didn't hit without any jumps, it would take, I think he said it was 8 or 18 years. I think because this is when I was just talking to him before I even volunteered for the program. I was just kind of throwing questions at him. I said, is the universe ever growing, or does it have a limit? Like Einstein, is it ever expanding at the speed of light, or does it have a limit? And he said it has a limit. And I said, well, how long would it take to get to that limit from here? And he kind of thought about it, and he goes, it was about 18 years. And then I said, he said, but then he thought about it, and he said, well, with the proper amount of jumps, about 15 minutes. He said that. So, and then like I said, once you get up, there's like fifth density, and then once you get up to like ninth density, it's almost just like you walk out your front door and you're on the other side of the universe. So it's like time space has more to do with it's like a ratio between density and like how far things away. And that's why whenever I was talking to the first class at the very beginning, he really didn't. When I kept on saying things like space, he kind of like, it's kind of like that, but not really. It's like it really wasn't like space, but it is kind of like he was just kind of he's wishy-washy about it. It was like he really didn't know how to explain it. He's like sort of like that, but not really. But it has a lot to do with it's like a density / kind of time space kind of equation you have to think about it in.
But
you have very high density beings, yeah.
Did you get outside of the Milky Way at least?
Oh yeah. Like I was, yeah. It's definitely, yeah.
Cool. And do you remember what kind of engine the Nimitz used to travel faster than light?
I don't remember the engine, but I think it was almost like it would create its own like black hole footprint and kind of fall into its own black hole footprint. And as it fell into its own kind of gravitational field black hole, it would go faster and faster and faster. It would just keep going and going. And you hit almost like once you got near the speed of light or at the speed of light, you would hit almost like a spiritual kind of plane, in the sense that you really didn't have to worry about going through worlds or stars or anything like that, because you would just pass right through them. You would just become like a ghost. You go right through it. Yeah.
Yeah. Does the copper microwave term ring a bell? Maybe copper microwave. And also when you're in hyperspace, you can manifest stuff, and you have critters to contend with, space critters.
Yeah. But
do you remember like
As far as the actual mechanics, well, I stories of different. The ship has abilities to like put up with that, but things like little. I've heard stories of like spiders and things like that. Not spiders of Mars and things like that, but little kind of critters, little spider critters and things like that. Yeah, I've heard that because you're kind of entering into like an alternate kind
Ocean.
of plane. Yeah, when you approach the speed of light.
Cool. And so yeah, you probably used portals that were left there by ancients, and also portals that were natural, right?
Yeah, they actually call them, and it's not like in the sense of H.P. Lovecraft, but I remember saying the old ones. They would say that, in the sense that like as far as I know, remember what they told me, it was the universe is kind of like with creator and all that stuff. There is kind of like a big bang in the sense that creator kind of is that big bang, and it's almost like we're shards. Our souls or consciousness are like part of God or the creator, or whatever you want to call it. And eventually, creator will call us all back home and become one again and experience all of our experiences. And that's like the whole point. That's why even the ETs, like things like suicide, isn't good because you're denying yourself the experience. Because the point of life isn't it for it to be good or bad or easy or sad or depressing or great or whatever. It's just an experience. You're there to experience this life. But things like the universe, as far as I was told, and like creator are eternal. And this has happened over and over again. This has happened limitless times, and it will happen limitless times more. But it was built by one of the ones probably similar to us in a humanoid sense, but it was built by one of the past incarnations or explosions or whatever you want to call it of soul fragmentation of creator, called himself back, did it again, just does it over and over again. And yeah, it was just, they call them the old ones, but it's not like in a sense of like Cthulhu and things like that. It's just beings that were similar to us, that were long, long, long ago, that created these, but they still work. Because ET tech's like built to last, and it's not like stuff we build. Like it's built to last a long time.
Yeah, I think they're also referred to as the ancient builder race.
Yeah,
And,
yeah. Just
and
it's incarnation similar to us that's happened limitless times before and will happen limitless times again.
yeah, and we're just small fractals of them. But I also heard that this is the 43rd universe. It's not the only one, but it's the one where the feelings of love and the duality of love and hate and fear is the greatest. That's what Andromedans say, anyway. But have you had ET contact outside of the program?
I mean, as far as where I'm at right now, I almost think it's because of like a contract thing. I remember Robert saying you're protected whenever I asked if that one guy, the goon, he tried strangling me on base because I guess he figured out that I'd eventually kill him or whatever. And he said, I don't know, I was drunk coming out of the bar, and he said, you think you're going to kill me? I'll kill you. And he came from behind me and started strangling me. And one of the guys who was in a not Solar Warden, but I think he was Kruger. He was a British guy. He was the guy behind the table with the green beret when I first walked through the metal detector device that picked up all my vitals. They were just like watching me on base and making sure nothing happened to me. But Robert said you're protected in the sense, and I think in the sense that he meant like, I think it's almost because until I run through my contract or whatever like that, until my time is up, it's like I really can't be, I don't know, messed with in a good way or a bad way. So I haven't had any kind of ET, any kind of nobody showing up at my house, nobody, nothing like that. No.
Yeah, that probably encouraged you to actually come out last year, right? So.
But, yeah, and I mean the memory just became so out of control in the sense that it was just because Robert even told me, he's like, you're going to get to a point where you're just not going to be able to hold this inside anymore. You're going to have to tell somebody. And yeah, they got so vivid to the point where I just started talking about it.
And what do Solar Warden actually look at as the biggest threat that there exists to Earth?
I would say the AI. The AI is probably the biggest threat. And as far as what I know about the AI, it's something that is from another universe. That's why it's so hard to defeat, because we don't have that technology, in the sense that we can go into other universes. Our universe doesn't have that technology. While that's what makes Kruger such an anomaly, it is something that really doesn't happen. Is like they have that technology to go from universe to universe and things like that. And part of what they're doing is trying to defeat the AI. They're trying to get enough universes together, band together, to actually go get to a point where we can defeat the AI, if that can happen. But that's what happened to the reptiles, and then that's what happened to the greys. The reptiles have a real kind of you know, Mike's right kind of opinion, where, well, this is stronger than us, this is more powerful than us, so it has the right to rule over us. So even they are like ruled over by the AI. And that's why AI, is really dangerous while they're trying to implement this and everything, because the more positive beings do not put AI in themselves. Their tech is different. Their tech usually has to be, their tech will have automatic protocols and things like that, if you're injured and things like that, to heal you faster. But if you have a major injury, and but it's not major enough to use a med bed, they'll actually just go onto the smart glass pad and direct the tech inside your body of where to concentrate at and what to heal the quickest, because they do not put like artificial intelligence in their body, and they don't use they barely, like I said, the major ships, the big starships and things like that, those need AI. They're just too vast of a ship, and that's really the only reason they use artificial intelligence is for that. But besides that, they use it very sparingly. The negative ETs use it for everything, but the positive beings use it very sparingly.
That's extremely consistent with what we've also been hearing. I mean, the fact that AI is the biggest danger, and that the Galactic Authority is going to sterilize any planet that gets overtaken by it. And also about the Draco using it, I think the way they spin it is they think they can actually maneuver it, they can control it, and that's kind of an impossible task. But that's what they think themselves. Okay, what I was going to ask that is that what, other than the Pleiadians, what are other ETs that Solar Warden allied with?
Well, there were other beings that I don't really remember we allied with, but we wanted to make the peace with them after we attacked the reptiles. I remember that. I remember there are like some that are kind of like the felines. I think they're more of a positive kind of being, but like the canine, they're kind of like an indifferent. They're not really good or bad. They're just kind of indifferent.
The Lyrans?
Yeah, Lyrans. Like in the military, it's funny because they would just, everything has a nickname in the military. They were cats, dogs, things like that. And I remember one time we were doing a morning meeting, like I said before, where we were all circled together, and the skipper, the captain of the ship, he said, how do you put it? The village of the damned is coming over today. I thought to myself, like, what's the village of the damned? And I thought about it, my smart glass pad, and it showed me like these images of like a movie and stuff like that. And that's exactly what they look like. There was two males, but they looked like the girls from that movie, The Village of the Damned, where they had like platinum blonde hair, and they had kind of like a Dutch boy haircut where they had like bangs that went down and like around. It was just platinum blonde, and their skin was just white, and they had a little bit of rosiness to their cheeks, and their eyes were just like glass, like ice blue eyes, but almost like shimmering glass. They were strange looking. But yeah, the Solar Warden called them the Village of the Damned, because that's what they look like. But everything kind of had a nickname in the military.
Cool. And I remember you saying that when you met the reptile in St. Morgan, there was another you on the base, and the first class officer was in a hurry for you to go. And do you know like what would happen if like you wouldn't have gone, if you had met that guy? So what was he trying to hurry you up for?
I don't think he was really trying to hurry me up. He was just trying to like get me to sign the papers quicker, because he was trying to get me to the realization, like, look, you're already there. Like, you already signed up for the program.
Right.
You know, like this has already happened. Like, you know what I mean? So it's like, that's a good question. What if I did? What if I just ran out? I don't know. It's like but I was already there, so I couldn't have ran out. Or if I did run out, they would have got me into the program. You know what I mean? It was that kind of like, I was already there. So
Yeah, free will has its limits, and I think there was no way you were going to escape that.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. The whole time loop thing is bizarre and kind of. I remember that feeling that it was like, that somebody's walked over your grave kind of feeling. It was a real unsettling feeling when you said that. Okay? And it was just starting to kind of go into my head like, oh right, this is time travel and I'm
right.
already back. You know what I mean?
And about your clone, acting really strangely and sitting in one place for hours, I still think that I just wanted to say that I think the way I interpret it is that they still have a soul. It's just an infant mind, and because everything that's in a meat suit is is in soul. That's what we hear from you know these experiencers, and so I don't think there's such a thing as uh, some meat suit without a soul. So, but if you have, you know, your gut feeling said that something really doesn't have a soul. I think even the gray that you saw in Saint Morgan, it's part of the hive mind soul. That's how I justify that one. But that's not really a question. The question is, when you were on Mars, have you visited the mantids layers? Because I heard they were really advanced.
I saw the mantises, yeah. As far as what I saw where they lived, as far as what I remember going into their homes and they had almost like adobe kind of huts, like on Mars and things like that. ET, their homes, it's weird. They're high tech in the sense of cleanliness. They have different kind of things to keep skin cells down, dust down. They're very clean and things like that in a sense. But they live I mean, not off the grid, but just like in cabins almost, cabins or huts or adobes and things like that. And they do have cities, like a central city, but not necessarily everybody lives in the cities. People will live on the outskirts of the city, things like that. But I remember being in their homes of the mantises. I remember the mantises were very, very polite in the sense in a human way. Um, Most other ETs, you have to ask them for everything, if you want anything. But the mantises were the only ones that would, if they, invited you into their home, they would say, please sit down. Would you like anything to eat? Would you like anything to drink? They would, it was like they were very homey and accommodating. While other ETs weren't like that. They would just say, come inside. And that would be it. And then if you said, like, I'm hungry, may I have something to eat? They would say yes. But they were the only ones that would just offer you things if you were a guest in their home. And they seemed almost like, and they had a really good sense of humor. I remember that too. They would laugh if you cracked a joke they liked. They would laugh, and
Telepathically.
no. They would actually like laugh. Their mandibles would come open. They would have almost like mantis kind of mandibles, but they would cover their mouths because they were so telepathic that they knew it was kind of unsettling to you to see that, and they wouldn't speak to you. So it was like you would speak to them out loud, but they were so telepathic they knew what you were saying. And they would speak to you telepathically. And even if you weren't a telepath, they were so telepathic that you could hear what they were saying. They wouldn't actually say anything, out loud. You would just hear it in your mind. They were so telepathic, you could hear it. And they could also do things like if you were chasing them, they could do things like bring up one of your worst nightmares or one of your worst like memories to you or things like that. Things that, and it would almost feel like you were there again. And you would just kind of stop or collapse or something like that because they could just put like a memory into you and they could get away that way. So they're extremely telepathic. They could like get into your head and do things like that too.
Right. And the other major sentient beings on Mars are the Mars native raptors, who allegedly look like something like Jurassic Park raptors, but with larger arms, and the Mars native humans who look like Apache Indians. Have you seen either of these?
I saw the raptors. I don't remember humans. I mean, I saw other humans, but I don't know. I don't remember if they were actually native to Mars. lots of stuff lived underground on Mars as well. And I remember there was almost like a reptile breakaway society on Mars, almost like Amish, I guess you would say. Like they didn't like using a lot of technology and things like that. They just kind of lived off the land and stuff. But I remember there was like a native. I don't know if they were native to Mars, but there was like a reptilian kind of society that lived there. And I remember the raptors there, and yeah, and the mantises as well. We were mostly concentrated on mantises because mantises are kind of like I said, everything in the universe has a click. They were really good masters at DNA, manipulating DNA. They really were really good at that. And the reptiles wanted them for just what they knew and everything like that. So we were trying to we had to get them alive and things like that to be able, and they could hook them up to a device and just get exactly what they wanted from them. But the mantises didn't want to cooperate most of the time, so they a lot of times they wouldn't cooperate.
And did you hear something about how they actually were just kind of peaceful at first, and we were the ones who went there, and only after that happened, went there and bombed them, and only after that happened did they retaliate at all? I mean, they were just minding their own business. Did you hear something like that?
Yeah, like we were always the aggressors to the mantises. I remember that. Like they didn't attack us, but we would always come after them. They were key people that we wanted. And yeah, sometimes the entire village would fight back because they wanted to protect these certain ones. And yeah, we would attack them. But yeah, they were very peaceful, very nice. They look intimidating and stuff like that, but they're so telepathic that you can tell right away if they're enjoying your company or if you insulted them. You know what I mean? Like they'll let you know right away. So, but yeah, they were very peaceful.
Yeah, that's what we hear. Yeah, that's consistent. And when you were on the German homeworld, does New Berlin ring a bell? Because that's apparently the capital planet of the German breakaway civilization.
I mean, yeah, that would make yes, because and there were everything was very Earth. It was very Earth. Everything was very Earth. I remember being fitted for a suit, and a man did it, with the tape measure and everything. I remember buying a suit, and it was very, very much like Earth, very much like Earth in every sense of the word. So yeah, that wouldn't alarm me at all. Even the architecture was very, old European. It looked like you were in, an old German town or something like that city.
That wouldn't be unique to the home world or the capital or whatever. That's how they operate in every colony, even in the one on Mars. So they just imitate a European city, and they just replicate it, but usually underground. And but I also was quite curious, when you were on the homeworld, do they also have like full control of the weather the way that Pleiadians did?
Oh yeah, yeah. There was no earthquakes or danger of floods or hurricanes or anything like that. That's one of the first things that beings kind of master once they, even before space travel and things like that. Something that we could master, but they don't bother using. But if anything, they use different technologies to kind of increase chaos and hardship and pain and suffering. All the things the reptiles like, the loosh and everything like that. They enjoy that. They enjoy our strife, our pain.
At least the royal cats, right? You said the warriors are neutral.
Oh yeah. Like I said, they didn't seem very. I mean, I didn't see them as nice, but I didn't see them as cruel either. They kind of minded their own business, and they were just stuck in the same boat as everybody else. They weren't the same species, and it was one of those things. If you respected them, they respected you. It was one of those,
And the same for the warrior caste, right? The worker caste.
Yeah, there was a worker, and they were very similar looking as far as I remember. I remember, darker colors, browns. I think even like a black. But yeah, every now and again you would see a green. Yeah, but they were rare. It was rare to see like a green one. Brown was like one of the more common colors I remember, a dark brown.
And do you remember slaves, or and the way that you can tell it's a slave that they have a slave color, or cyborgs on the German homeworld?
No, no. I was just in the beach in the city though. I didn't really go any further than outside the city. I was on the beach. I went to the beach. I went to the city. But no, I don't remember any of that stuff like that. Everybody,
Right.
it was like Europe in the sense where everybody had a job. There were waiters, things like that. So it was very Earth. It was like Earth.
And this is a bit of a non sequitur, but have you heard about the lifespans of ETs other than Pleiadians, who we know, I mean, Taygetans, who we know are 3,000 years old on average?
Well, that's a memory that stands out so much to me because of Robert. And like I said, even that's kind of more difficult for me to remember in the sense that it's more of a factual thing. Maybe, God, I'm hoping if once I'm done with my tour, how strange is that? But once I'm done, that more of the memories will come back. A lot of guys tell me things like that, like Tony Rodriguez and everything like that. You remember even more once you actually come back.
Yeah, I heard that reptilians live way longer than humanoids.
Oh,
But
well, yeah, like Aquino told me. He told me that, and it was weird. I remember he did. Maybe he did say his name, but I don't remember. That he almost acted like he was Aquino. It was like a strange kind of personality disorder or something. Like he lived in this body for so long, he kind of saw himself as this being more than he was a reptile. But he said that he was like worshipped in ancient Egypt at one time.
yeah,
So whatever that being was very old.
probably a Naga who lives in inner Earth. That'd be my guess.
He told me he was a native inhabitant of Earth, and he was black. He was like black and shiny. He was like real, like a snake, like a black snake, and he wore a red hood and a red robe. And he told me he was like a native inhabitant of Earth.
And as for the reptilian who you negotiated the peace treaty or truce or whatever in Solar Warden, did it look the same as the royal cast in Dark Fleet?
It was strange because in the Dark Fleet, I don't think it was the same. In the Dark Fleet, it was very dark. Whenever you're around the reptiles, like their quarters and things like that, there wasn't a lot of light at all. But I remember whenever I was negotiating with this one, it was just maybe a little bit dimmer, but nearly same light, and looked more healthy. Looked more. I remember the ones in the Dark Fleet were just very old and unhealthy looking. I don't know. Maybe it was almost. It seemed almost like I don't know. Like they had almost like a.
You said they were like Skeksis or whatever from Dark Fleet.
Yeah, they looked almost more buzzard-like, more bird buzzard-like in a sense. But you could kind of see their scales every now and again. But they were very dark, and everything was very dark in the Dark Fleet ships. It was like in their area of the ship. When you actually did see them, yeah, they had the long snouts, but it was kind of more beak-like their snouts. While with the ones I remember, theirs was more like a reptile, rounded off on the end. But yeah, they were different looking, but not by much. Still very old looking. They just look. Once you get up to a master of a ship, as they call them, like a captain, like equivalent of a reptilian captain of a ship, they're very old by that time, and they kind of hunch over and they walk slowly and things like that. And they always have that big train behind them of their uniform kind of flows behind them, and I'm guessing it's because they have a tail and it's like covered the tail or something. But they always seem to like drag like a robe, like their uniform behind them. It's almost like a long robe that drags behind them.
That makes sense that they're aged because you would expect them to be superimposing considering they subjugated all the other castes. So they're probably much fitter in their prime. But you mentioned before you recruited the miners that the moon was freed. And do you know anything about what freed the moon?
It was Solar Warden that did it, so it was like as they call it, a joint task force of different ETs, and Pleiadians, and Arcturians. Those are the two main ones I remember working with. But then there were some others. But yeah, it was something that I wasn't a part of, but it did happen. But when we did recruit them, there were certain ones that wanted to stay there. And I remember part of like what I was doing was I wanted to, because the women were so used to having babies, and I don't know, a certain age after nursing or something, they would take them away, and that's how it was. And I encouraged them to start having families and use it less like a brothel, in that sense, and start actually having, marriages and families, and raising their children and things like that. That was something kind of new to them, and I remember doing that.
And something that always kind of seemed a little odd to me, not that it's not common, it's super common. We hear about it all the time, but how come they still use hand-to-hand combat in warfare in space? You would think it would just be projectiles.
ETs are real big scavengers in the sense that they like getting tech. They don't want to blow up an entire ship that has all kinds of tech in it, things that improvements that have been made on certain technologies that they don't know about yet. They're all about just scavenging tech. But also, not only that, I mean, they might have some of their people that are enslaved on that ship that have the tech, that have the artificial intelligence in them, and they don't really have a choice, and they're just kind of hooked up to the AI. And then they also maybe their souls or something on that ship that people they know, and then people they went back, people, so it's like it doesn't make any sense to just blow up a ship when it has all this technology on it, that you could take and figure out, take apart and figure out how it works. There's all kinds of new things that you can discover just on a major ship like that. So it makes more sense to board the ship, try to disable it, and then you can just take whatever you want after the fighting's over, rather than just blow it apart. Because they try after what they try to do is just disable a ship and then board it, and then that's what they try to do rather than just blow it apart. Unless it's something minor, a minor ship, like it's in the sense that if it's small craft, it's trying to escape, then yeah, just blow it apart. But if it's a starship, like a major ship, then you want that ship.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I guess it's more of an exclusive thing for ships, right? But could you mentioned when you returned from the Taigetan homeworld, you looked down the timeline of your CO, I think, and what was that skill like?
Well, it's almost like that's something else I could do when I was younger, but different things happened when I was a kid and I forgot. But it was almost like if you're like, I remember fifth density, if you're in the presence of somebody, for me, it was like this. You would see like a swirl. I would see a swirling at the top right of my vision. And then I could look at that swirling and kind of focus on it. And then that swirling became a tunnel. And then I could go into that tunnel. And I could go faster down the tunnel to pass more mundane parts of this person's life. But then certain, getting married and things like that, I could stop at the tunnel and look around and get real good idea of it. And then I could just go down further and stop at another point in that person's life, the birth of his son or whatever. And I could explain to him like, oh yeah, then now you're seeing this and this is happening. This is what you name your son. Then I can go down further. So it's almost like you can go fast down this tunnel and then you stop and then you can just kind of look around and observe what's happening. And it's almost like you're seeing that person, you're seeing it through his eyes, you're seeing it through her eyes, you're seeing it through that person's eyes, you know their innermost thoughts and things like that. That's what it's like when you're looking down someone else's timeline. It's like you're experiencing that part of their life, but then you can just jet past certain parts, and then go to the more important parts of their life. Is how it feels.
Right. And I guess it's like with the looking glass, but also I wanted to mention that we hear that also that the future is never really carved in stone. So I don't know if you can 100% trust either the skill of looking down the timeline or the looking glass. I mean, maybe, but I would like to think that there's enough chance that you can avoid those futures. That's just me.
There's always an anomaly as far as what Robert was saying. There's always like an anomaly, but like a 5%, kind of maybe this won't happen this way. But as far as like looking glass and things like that, as far as what he was telling me, he was confident in the sense that very confident. And it's also, it has to do with how far out are you going. The further out you go, the more centuries you go out, yeah, the less accurate it is. But if you're just talking about like 50 years, they can just pretty much pinpoint that accurately, you know. But if it's like, you know, centuries out, then yeah, then it's more. There's a lot more anomalies. There's a lot more percentages. They have it to a fine science as far as exact percentages and things like that. You know,
Mm.
but it also has to do. And timelines are the same way. It's just like with ETs is 100 years, you have like 10 different possibilities. You know what I mean? And then as you go down, it works its way down in the 7, 6, 4, and then once you're in within like 10 years, there's only about 2 possibilities. And then once you're like there's only 1 possibility. You know what I mean? Once you're in like within 5 years, there's only 1. So it's like it's weird because ETs and things like that, a lot of them know when they're going to die. You know what I mean? They know it's when it's their time. So it's bizarre, yeah. And it's just
Wow.
and I remember whenever we were fighting a ship of reptiles, and I said, if they knew they were going to die, if they knew this was going to happen, then why do they fight? And she told me because they must try. And it's just like the
Right.
will of the universe. It's like you must try, you know, and that's
Cool.
just the way it is.
And one prediction that was made by Looking Glass that really caught my eye was, well, they were all pretty amazing, but that they made the Guardians of the Galaxy after you. And have you watched it? And would you say it's true that you were the inspiration?
It wasn't Looking Glass. That was more Robert himself told me that. That he told me that he time traveled so much and he knew a lot about all this stuff. I mean, yeah, like in the sense that, like I said, I watched in the sense that all the music I listened to it because I was trying to like figure out, you know, did my mom listen to this? Did my dad listen to it? Is this something that was like part of my childhood? If I could remember my childhood, I could remember me, things like that. But yeah, I mean, that was about it. Um, I remember, yeah, that it was. I listened to oldies and things like that, but it was the 60s and 70s. It wasn't just 70s. He said you listen to 50s too, Buddy Holly, things like that. And you know, you listen to some 80s, but it was mostly 60s and 70s. And he said, you know, you're both pilots and you both missed your mom, and that's how he put it. And I also remember kind of being a goofball with the kids, you know, the Tigetan kids and things like that. There was like a family day, like once a week, probably around about once a week. They had like a family day where they would just kind of the men would fold their arms and they would talk, and the women would talk, and they would talk about their week, what they did. But they really didn't interact with the kids, and the kids would, you know, they would play tag, they would chase each other and run around and things like that. They really didn't have a lot of interaction with the kids. And I remember when I first got there and I sat down, all the kids just came up to me and they were just staring at me. They knew I was different. And like I remember one of them, you know, he put his hand on my knee and was just staring at me, like just they were just all staring at me. So it was kind of awkward. So just to break it, I picked him up and I put him on my shoulders and I just started walking around with him, you know, with him on my shoulders. And I remember Leader's son, like I said, he was a warrior cast. The kids in general are very coordinated. I mean, by 2 years old, this kid was like, he was running straight at walls and like taking 2 steps up and doing a backflip, almost kind of parkour kind of thing. And I remember Leader's son, like whenever I picked up this one boy and I put him on my shoulders, he got jealous and he climbed up his dad's back like real quick and he grabbed his hair and kind of hoisted himself up on the shoulders. And I remember like the dad going like, "Ooh," like, you know, like because he yanked his hair so hard. But yeah, like I remember kind of just being a goofball. That was, I don't know, but I wasn't like that all the time. But as far as just the actual parts of the story, no, I mean it's typical stuff. As far as true stories in a movie go, it's just there's just like a theme, and then all the rest is just kind of fiction.
Right. And you mentioned that Tigetan warrior cast definitely much stronger than you and everything, but they were 7 feet. But the ones that were regular, that were about your feet, a little taller, well, did they weigh more than you? And like, were they also stronger than you? Because the reason why I ask is that I remember you picked up Mother, and she was extremely light. You said she was something like 90 pounds.
I think maybe that's just because their bone density goes down and their organs don't grow either. It's just like their bones grow, so it's strange, and they get that on the verge of too much plastic surgery look about them, where their cheekbones become very high, um, and their skin looks almost kind of stretched because your skin's an organ too, so it really doesn't grow, and their skin gets kind of stretched. They get almost like a kind of, I wouldn't say translucent, but just you can their skin looks almost kind of clear or something. It's not like that exactly. Just like an older person, their skin gets thinner, and the back of their back of their hand is you can see more of their veins and things like that. But I think that was just because her herself really wasn't any bigger in the sense that her muscles, I don't think their muscles grow a little bit, I think, but as far as their organs just kind of go up into their rib cage and their lungs and their heart and things like that. So, she really didn't get any bigger in the sense that, weight wise, but it's just her bones got longer. And they walk like they're more fragile. I think their bones probably become, just as we get older, their bones become more fragile. And yeah, yeah, she was just really light. She was I don't know. Maybe it was the adrenaline, but yeah, she felt extremely light to me. And yeah, I don't remember. The regular men were strong, yeah, much stronger than you. But I mean, the Germans were strong too. But I don't know if they were any stronger than them. But even the Germans, like the Germans on base, they were. I remember Robert told me, there was the first class that didn't like me. He was a skinny guy. We had a senior chief with a mustache and glasses. He was a skinny guy. And so I brought that up. I was just, why are there skinny ones and why do some of them wear glasses? And he said, we can't have just a bunch of Ubermen running around on base. And I said, talk about attention to detail. And I remember only the S3, which is like the legal officer, a lieutenant. And he actually told me he was on my ship. Same thing with that senior chief with the glasses. He was on my ship, the one I was on, the Dark Fleet. And he was big. He was like the only one that I can remember. They're like usually just big guys. Like they look like guys that could bench probably around 350 pounds, something like that, 400 pounds. They're not extraordinarily huge, but they're really like in shape looking people, like period, because of the tech they have in their bodies and everything else. And they're genetically augmented in the womb.
I think a big part of play is that they imbibe the black goo in a ceremony or when they get like promoted to officer because they're famous for drinking. But black goo is like the AI nanobot kind of oil that Draco used to also make themselves like some along the lines of what the density chair does. It ups your IQ and makes you faster and stronger, but at the expense of your emotions. And so about the Taigetans, do they also have speech, or do they just speak telepathically?
They speak, yeah, they have a speech, but they have a language, and they do have like a type of almost like religion, and they do have like ceremony and things like that for marriages. I think only really the warrior caste do that. They get many wives, but whenever like they get like, I think it's like mostly with your queen, which is like your main wife, your first wife. And then I remember going to my first daughter's wedding, and there was a female in charge of the ceremony, a woman in charge of the ceremony. And yeah, I mean, and they do use speech in that sense, and they do have a type of language. And I don't know, it seemed almost kind of Native American to me. In that sense, like the I don't know, like Elwani ata anahiyada anahiyada. It's almost like that, like you would hear like American Indians speak. It's almost like that. But I remember them speaking on the ship too, and if they were speaking to just somebody on the ship that wasn't a telepath, just English, it was they spoke slow. It was almost like they thought about every word they were going to say. So it was, almost like they were speaking like this, and they would talk to you very calm, and but they would enunciate every word, and it was very slow, and they would just kind of take strange pauses every now and again. But I mean, they can disguise that. I'm sure if they were just trying to blend in with Earth, they could just speak normally. But when it came to, on Solar Warden, where they knew that everybody knew who they were, they spoke, it was strange, like, slow, rhythmic kind of with pauses here and there.
Yeah, I don't think that's a coincidence that it sounded kind of similar to ours because this is an excerpt from Andromeda. So Andromeda's dictated this to Alex Collier, who's like a famous whistleblower or whatever, a ufologist. And this is the information, is that all Earth's languages are derived from an ancient pre-Sumerian language called Tamil, which was spoken in Lyra and in the Pleiades. The Pleiadians and the Earth's alphabets are very similar. The script from that is the parent of most of our present-day alphabets and was developed here on Earth and carried back to the Seven Sisters. So they kind of made sense. But the next question was about their technology. Do they have like chips implanted to make it easier to like do day-to-day tasks? And like what do their books look like?
Their books?
Yeah, the way they learn information.
Smart glass pads is what everybody does. What was the question before that?
Do they have chips implanted to make them like smarter or something?
I mean, like I said, they have the tech in them and everything like that. But no, I mean, they're just born extraordinarily smart. I would say if they were just, third density like us, they would all pretty much have like an average of about a 200 IQ. They were very, very smart. And like I said, it's just like I don't know, it's like the rules of the universe or something. When you go into the fifth density, it's like you get an extra 200 IQ points. It's just like the way it is. But I mean, their intelligence is the point where they can actually come to a world. They can actually come to Earth and say they came to France or something like that. They could not know any kind of French at all whatsoever. And somebody could speak to them in French and they could actually pick out what they wanted to say to that person from being telepathic and picking it out from that person's mind and be able to speak back to them in French, just almost like doing like a telepathic loop. And that's like how intelligent they are. It's like they don't even have to study languages. It's just they could just pick it up from your own mind. And they actually have an expression I remember they use where if they'll say your name to you, and then if you say something like, "How did you know my name?" and they'll say, "I plucked it from your mind." And then they say that, they'll say, "I plucked it." I remember that. And but yeah, I mean, they were just very intelligent. I also remember like on the ship, it seemed like they had a type of tech in them that kind of suppressed more of their emotions because they seemed very emotionless on the ship in the sense that they were very, I don't know what you would call it. Not just they laughed and things like that. And the warrior cast, they were more open to laugh. You could crack a joke, and if they got it, they would start cracking up. I mean, the regular men weren't so much. But it seemed like once you got off the ship and you were on their home world, they took the tech out of you, and things like jealousy and things like that popped up more.
Makes sense. And you mentioned that they were really fond of your music, which means they really enjoyed it, but they also didn't have any themselves except some weird overlapping of nature sounds. How come they didn't, given that they have access to all the galaxies, music and everything, how come they don't develop their own music style and stuff like that? Do they have art forms?
I mean, yeah, they do have like types of art, paintings and things like that, but it's just our classical art, our classical music, things like that. Really, they're amazed by it. It seems like that's something that it seems so strange to us. Like, why couldn't other ETs do this? Because it's something really only we can do. So that's why it seems so strange to us, because they just don't have that in them. They don't have that spark of, and that's one of the reasons they like it so much. We're very creative. They consider us very creative, very good engineers. But I mean, we're not that big of a deal. Earth isn't that big of a deal in the sense that we're just now starting to get into the field of vision of other ETs. It's just like most of them just stay on their home world and things like that. Most of them don't go out and do this. So it's just we're just now beginning to make an impression on them. That's kind of how it is. I mean, there are others that have been studying us for a long time, but that is like a very a minority of them, in the sense that a majority of them really don't know anything about Earth culture or music or anything like that, and they're very interested in learn. And then once they hear it, they're amazed by it at first, but then they just settle right into it, like it's just something they've known all along.
And do they actually have animals? Because you mentioned fish, but I guess it's just for sustenance. Do they have animals? Because I also heard from Charles Hall about also other types of Nordics, the tall whites, that they mentioned the aliens who have a base in Nevada, that basically humans are unique in the sense that they have pets and they have kinship with animals, because usually when superior species colonize the planet, they take all of those middling creatures out and only leave what they need. So do they have animals on Tagetem Homeward?
They don't have predators and things like that. Yeah, they get rid of all their predators. They did have those things at one time, but they do have pets. I remember they had like a cat. It looked almost like an ocelot. It looked kind of like an ocelot, like a Central American jungle cat. Looked almost like a house cat, but very big. And then they have like a type of like a non-flying, like a bird kind of squirrel. It's almost like a bird with like 4 legs, like it has feathers, but it climbs around in the trees, and that's like a pet. And that's all I remember as far as, but they do have pets. But as far as like their predators and all that, like I said, back to like diseases and things like that, it's not a thing. Gnats, mosquitoes, little bugs that bug you, nothing like that exists. They do have worms to break down their soil. They have created like a natural, I don't know if it's an artificial or something that just kept around, a type of bacteria to break down things, plant life and things like that. But I mean, I think it was like they're more worried with them. With the Germans and the horses and all that stuff, that kind of kinship that we have with dogs and horses, they really don't have that. You know what I mean? They really don't have that, where it's almost like one and the same animal. It's like we're kind of one and the same, riding a horse or hunting with a dog, things like that. They don't do things like that at all.
If only they found a way to stop the growing after 2,000 years, right?
Yeah.
But
yeah. Well, you think they would? That's another thing. A lot of them will see birth, age, and death is like something that they want to partake in. It's part of life. It's everything must born and everything must die. So some beings, they want to keep on age regression themselves, or putting tech in themselves to prolong their lives. Reptiles are huge on that. But most beings in the universe and things like that, there's like a natural balance and order to, birth, age, and death. And if you do try to escape it, like I said, it's just like if you do try to prolong your life for long periods of time, it'll, it wears out on your
genetics.
Your mind, yeah. It wears out on your mind. It can drive you
right.
mad.
Oh yeah.
Staying a lot too long.
And do you remember any particularly tasty food, like a exotic vegetable or something?
Man, I remember first coming on their ship and how great their food was compared to like the Dark Fleet. I remember like in the Dark Fleet there was almost like colored cubes you had to eat, like Soylent Green.
It's all that 3D printed food.
It could be. There was like this gelatinous cube, I remember, on a tray, and it even had a heat light lamp on it. And this was in the Dark Fleet, and there was even almost like a bread knife, like a saw knife, to saw it off like a piece. And it tasted kind of like meat, but very salty, and it like kind of had like sweat puddles on it. Like
no, but on the other ship, let's talk about the good food. So we already know the food on that was crap.
Oh,
really interests me. The food over here was like grown naturally. None of this stuff is like 3D printed or like pulled through a portal, right? This is like it grew on some sort of equivalent of a tree on Earth and was harvested and ripened, or like
a third of the ship was a what you call it, like a
hydroponic
farm. They were really big about getting food to you as soon as possible, but they did use like a portal system to give you your food once that was done, it was cooked and everything like that. And it looked almost like it was like a handle, like the Salvation Army boxes where you drop off clothes and things like that, but instead of it pulling out that way, you just pulled it up. There was like a handle that you just kind of pulled up, and the food was just there waiting for you on a tray.
But do you still get the tax break?
Yeah, but I mean, they were all about fresh. They said the reason why they one of the reasons they live so long is because it was off the vine and on your plate within about 20 minutes. They wanted their food extremely fresh and not cooked very long, maybe minorly steamed, things like that. It was almost kind of raw cooked, and like I said, they drank like a kind of blue liquid that was for your, like amino acids and proteins and B vitamins, things like that that you get from animals and fish and things like that. Because they didn't want to bring, frozen fish or anything like that on the ship because it was too old. Like they wanted it fresh. They wanted it like extremely fresh. Everything had to be very fresh.
Okay. Yeah, no, that makes sense. Anyway, I'm sorry, Daniel, back to you.
And you said they even you imported a watermelon and they kind of enjoyed that. But did they do anything particular like in their spare time other than you mentioned that they were really studious studious? Did they have like activities that were specific to them?
Like their own personal sport and things like that. They had like forms of sport, but I don't remember playing it that much. And they were very interested in me. They wanted to, like I said, they don't know us that well in the sense that interaction with us. They don't have that many visitors as far as from Earth. And yeah, like if I taught them something, whether it was baseball or volleyball or anything like that, they were very, very interested. And they wanted to learn everything about it.
Mm-hmm.
It's too bad it didn't teach them soccer or anything.
Well, I mean, I only got it. Like I said, it was just like after our first football game, American football. I that's whenever I had to go back. It was just like a big shock to me. It was like I taught them all this stuff, and then I just had to go back, and that was like a big surprise. But I mean, I was working my way up. If I could have stayed there longer, I would have taught them everything I knew as far as sport wise because they loved it. But yeah.
And do they have the same gravity there?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Everything is similar. Yeah.
And how long was the day, and what did the sky look like?
Sky was the same. The days, as far as I remember, was the same, but the sun was their star was noticeably like farther away. Like you could just tell it wasn't as blazing hot. You know what I mean? In the summer, like they really didn't have a summer. And I know they regulate it. It's just always kind of like a spring. It's always like a nice, cool kind of spring, but you could just tell it was just like you could just tell that their star was farther away from their world.
Also, Earth, to interject. Also, look, you know how our moon, at least I was told, it was towed into orbit, but there's no other moons on other planets that are in tidal lock, right? Please tell me other civilizations are laughing at us, thinking like we think that's normal, because that's just.
I don't remember. Yeah, they didn't have a moon. There was no moon, and yeah, as far as I know,
in the solar system at all, like do they laugh at us because of our moon, like having nowhere near the composition of Earth 1 and 2, being in tidal lock?
Yeah, I don't know if they really. I mean, they have a policy with things of our ignorance and even our religion and things like that, where they just want to. They keep their hands up. They just stay away. Like if you bring it up, they don't mind, but they have no opinion of it. It's almost they would consider it impolite or rude, I believe. To say like those guys are knuckleheads for not understanding that.
Okay, and fellas, I do want y'all to know, Daniel, we are approaching 2 hours here.
I have like 5 more. So also,
then you're gonna finish. Oh no, that's fine. I was just saying, let's just break this up if you have a whole bunch more. But if you have, go ahead and finish. And I don't mean to rush anyone. I just want actual, doable chunks for people to listen.
I would like to say something at the end too. Just give me a reminder. Yeah, just something quick. Something else Robert told me that I don't think I saw it in I don't think I said it in any other show. I just thought,
Cool. Y'all go ahead. I'm not getting interrupted anymore.
Okay.
And just to see if Alex Collier's Andromedans were right about Pleiadians, is it true that they have no use for money and politics?
Yeah, no money, and there is like a king and stuff like that, but he's almost just more like an ambassador of their world. Like if a high-ranking reptile comes to their world, he's the one that negotiates with them and things like that. But as far as like, do you have to say all the time? No. I mean, do you have to say leader all the time? No. It's one of those things where you first meet them, you address them, their proper title, but you don't have to keep on saying it like it's a rank or something like that or a title. You just say it once you meet them that day, and then after that, you just talk to them plainly.
And when I first heard that they wanted you to be king and to like proliferate like um, your line and stuff, and now you have hundreds of daughters and dozens of sons. That really reminded me of another thing that Collier was dictated from the Andromedans, which is that these races that are really pure and just interbreed within each other for a long time experience breakdown in genetic coding. And for example, they said that in 172 linear Earth years is when the Pleiadians are going to start experiencing their first genetic breakdown for the first time, and they're going to see deformities at birth. And the reason they're so interested, I mean, they're beginning to show interest in us. I mean, they've been here for 80,000 years. Also, they also said, but more so now than other times, is that we're the only race capable of giving them this genetic boost. The rub is that we have a different like vibratory frequency because we have a lot of fear in us, and that kind of keeps them away from us. Does that resonate in a way for you?
Yes, I mean, one of the things Robert said was, when he said that, he said they were using you. He said, but then he smiled and he said, but you didn't mind. And yeah, it was like their DNA is like stagnant. Yeah, they're becoming stagnant. Like anything else, you get like I think even what is in Iceland and stuff like that, they experience that and things like that when you get like a cut off group of people like that. And another thing is as far as our DNA wise, we can be like spliced with pretty much anything, like DNA wise. But as far as just like not natural conception and birth and things like that, only about like less than 2% of the world's population is genetically compatible enough with them to be able to do that. So whenever they do find somebody that's like that, it's like they use it, they take advantage of the situation. Yeah, and it's like they are experiencing like a stagnant in their genetics.
And just as an aside, they also said that the Andromedans said that we have a really poor reputation because we were the only race in the galaxy that kills and turns on itself, the only one that allows itself to live in poverty, that allows its members of its race to starve and be homeless, and that sells itself into slavery. And it's not that the Pleiadians are judging, it's just that they don't understand why we do it. But lastly, I promise a guy, a new friend of mine, that I would let him ask you a few questions, and there's about, I don't know, 8 to 10 of them. If you have time to squeeze them in. The first one is so these are Bhakta Peters questions. And the first one is, the exo Robert that is 400 years old, do you still keep in touch with him? And when was the last time you spoke with him?
Just when I left the command, and he even said, you'll never see me again. I said, I'll see you again. He said, no, you won't. You won't ever see me again. And I think, like I said, I think it has to do something with the contract. I think I have to be left alone or whatever until my time is up. But as far as he was concerned, he said we would never see each other again.
Right. And he says that, do you think a person could attain fifth density on their own without the device, just through meditation or natural means like austerities?
Yes, because when I was like in my mid-teens, I got pretty good at astral projecting. That was another thing I could do. And it was just one of those things where I just forgot, just through abuse and everything else. But whenever you went to the density chair, it was the same feeling of when your soul first comes out of your body. It was like this feeling of weightless, like cold, and then weightlessness. It almost felt like an astral projection. It had that same feeling of whenever they were pushing you up in the fifth density. So I would say yes. I would say if you knew how to like meditate properly and you knew the steps, you could probably do it naturally. But it would be difficult in the sense that this world is artificially manipulated to keep us down. This our sun, our earth, everything else. So it would be difficult in that sense. But I would say it would be possible.
Cool. And what about, do you still keep in touch with the Yo Dog guy or anyone else from back then?
No, I mean, I could. I mean, I know Tim and everything else. I mean, I don't know him, but I know I could get attached to him or hold him on Facebook or anything else. But yeah, the Yo Dog guy was just some guy that he was getting out of the command in a few months before I met him. And I remember the guy saying like, "Oh yeah, he went back into the chair like he couldn't handle the memories. Like they got him back. Like yeah, it's like the guys are talking about it. And I really didn't know what they were talking about, but they got him to go back. So he may not have any memories of it.
Okay, cool. His next question is, do you remember the Tibetans practicing any rituals, ceremonies, magic, or spiritual practices?
Well, like I said, I remember like a religion kind of a spiritual practice in that kind of sense. I remember the warrior caste had a way of a discipline. They try to teach me of not fearing death. They had like a meditation thing they would do. Like they were very disciplined about that. They had absolutely no fear of death. I remember I started researching like there's things I remember like doing almost like campfire stories because they didn't do things like that. I remember building like bonfires at night, and a bunch of them would come over, and I would have like almost like bleachers, and I would just recite stories. I became I don't know like almost like a bard or something for the king or something. Like I was playing music and I was a storyteller and things like that. I started getting good at that. But as far as like I remember mother was it's almost like when they get to a certain age they do things like that where they can really just persuade you, and it's very spiritual and almost in a sense of like yeah like you would consider that magic or something, but they can persuade you in certain ways and have you do things and things like that. It's almost like I think it's almost just because they've been around so long and they're just so old that they just know I don't know how the universe works, but it does seem almost kind of like magic if you would like to call it that.
And this next one seems pretty open and shut, but he says, did the Tibetans believe in the law of karma and practice the golden rule of treating others how you want yourself to be treated?
Oh, of course, yes.
Yeah, that's what I thought. And do you feel that the Tibetans and your family out there is keeping an eye on you?
I hope I do have kind of thoughts and dreams sometimes. Sometimes I do think that they're thinking about me. Sometimes I feel as though that, and I remember being in Solar Warden and like attaching, experiencing myself here sometimes. You know, you get almost like a feeling like, oh, like he's thinking about me right now and things like that. I mean, as far as like, that's another thing you have to understand. They don't have as, I don't know, it's difficult. Well, they're not heartless or anything like that, and they're, you know, or anything, but most ETs consider us like emotional basket cases and things like that. So, I mean, if you get, you know, to me, and stuff like that, they don't like that, you know? So I mean, I do get kind of down about it and things like that and wondering if they're thinking about me. And sometimes I do feel as though they are thinking about me, but you have to understand that I'm still there, like in a sense, you know what I mean? I'm still there on that world. So it's not like I am away from them.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, I sometimes do think that they are contacting me, but I sometimes wonder, is it me or is it them?
Hmm. Right. And not going away from Tibetans, did you experience black or ceremonial magic in the SSPs or at the St. Malkin's base?
Um, I mean, with the Kino, I remember there was a time where they did like he did put me in the shock one too many times, or killed me one too many times, or something like that, and I wasn't coming back, and I wasn't coming to, and I was just on the floor or something, laying there, and I think I remember him like, I don't know, man, like it was just like some sort of, this is like a weird one, but I don't know, some sort of medallion or trinket, and he was whispering something under his breath, and it kind of brought me to, and that was really eerie and strange. And that
Okay.
was like really the only thing I remember of that.
Okay. Um, and other than the half man, half spider chimera, did you see or witness or heard rumors of any others like that?
Well, I mean, there were hybrid like reptiles and things like that. They would have a, like I said, a reptile. It would have your genetics and it would look similar to you. And I remember the second officer of the German ship, the guy that I became friends with, and I had dinner with his family on their world. he had one, and I remember it was taken out by a bunch of spiders. We got attacked by a bunch of spiders one time, and it was shooting him, and it just tore it apart. We were running, and he bought us time to get back to the ship, to get back to the transport, and yeah, it took it out. But I mean, he was fine because that was only his consciousness was in this, hybrid kind of human slash reptilian kind of hybrid that they could project their consciousness into and use it almost like an avatar type thing.
Right. And he just had to include this one. Did the Taigetans or SSP people ever drop any info on Sasquatch, Dogman, or any other cryptid or ghost or the like?
That's a good question.
Dogman, ghost, or Bigfoot?
It's probably too deep of a cut.
Yeah, I don't remember anything like that. But I mean, you start to understand that as far as ghosts and things like that. Yeah, I mean, in a sense, you could call them ghosts, but even, you know what I mean? Even a fourth density, it's more like a fourth density being, I guess is what you would call it. It's more of like a spirit world spirit. Once you get up to their density or beyond their density, they're just as much as flesh as blood, it seems like, as you or I. You know what I mean? It's strange. But there is like, a spirit. And I remember telling Robert, because of the children I saw on the base and things like that, I said, you're going to hell for this. And he said, there is no hell. And I said, but there's a heaven, and he said, of sorts. And that's like as far as he would go into it.
Which segues nicely into his last question, which is, are you Christian? And if not, what are your spiritual beliefs?
I mean, overall, I consider myself Christian, there is there is something responsible for all this. There is a creator, and there is a heaven, as far as what Robert told me. And those are the memories I dwell on those a lot because, like I said, the memories of fifth density are a lot different than the memories here. And that was like a memory here. And I asked him a lot of questions. He told me a lot of things. Those are the memories that I tap into those memories, and then I remember the more of the fifth density memory. It's kind of like how it works.
Cool. Well, that was all I had for you today. Well, thank you very much. And
yeah, sure.
Dan, you can also you had the thing.
Turn. He wanted to conclude with something.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. There's one more thing that Robert told me. He told me the Library of Alexandria, whenever Caesar burned it down, he said they got everything out of it. He said they got all the books, all the scrolls.
I figured all that stuff's kept, and it's probably all at the Vatican.
And it's in the catacombs of the Vatican.
Oh my God! You see, they hoard all that technology. They want us to think it's all gone.
And he said that they're going to release it soon, and it's going to change everything. Our history. He said Atlantis is real. We're going to learn that, and evolution is just complete nonsense, and we're going to learn about that. And then also, he was talking about this disease that we have here right now and things like that. With he called it the flu, the coronavirus, and he said that like diseases are manufactured, and he said that I remember I said, well, what about polio? That's like a big one that I remember. And he said like they just started the whole vaccine craze like right before polio, and what they were doing is injecting people with polio, and that's how people got polio. So it's like your vaccines and your injections, they're injecting you with disease.
That's exactly it. That's exactly it. Then they got you for life. You can keep coming back, getting another pill for another symptom.
That was the subject. That was the subject of two of our previous videos.
The Library of Alexandria, that was a big one that I forgot to say in any other videos. They burned it down, but they got everything out first.
Well, they want us to think all that information is lost, right? But it's been hoarded.
So we have everything, yeah.
Just like they release these viruses. It's all strategic. They slam this together with technology. They custom build, they piecemeal, and they go patent it, and they just want us to all. That's why I can't stand the mainstream media. They piss down our back and tell us it's raining. They want us to believe dumb shit constantly. And perfect example is this whole Greta Thunberg deal. This whole, look at this stupid kid, listen to her. Get used to not having good information. Dumb humanity down.
Agreed. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, fellas, we all been sitting here for a minute. Anyone have anything else to say before I end this?
I'm done. Thank you.
Daniel?
Yep. Thanks for having me.
All right, y'all get the fuck out of here. Later.